Hello, my name is Christopher Parra, and today we're going to be talking about the different ways of aging. Now, when you think of aging, I think the first thing that does come to mind would be your parents, your grandparents, and those that came before you. Now, there's one characteristic trait that I think that everyone would think of when they think about aging. Yourself, you're young, you have few wrinkles, you still have the elasticity in your skin, and then you look at your parents and you start to realize that they're aging with you. You start to notice changes within their eyes, their crow's feet. Notice more wrinkles when they smile. Notice them making a sound when they get up. That could also be all the part of aging. Now, those things that I mentioned, we want to keep in mind that we're removing any environmental or excluding any other physical changes or environments, just looking at the person themselves. Now, when you look at your grandparents, sometimes you might get emotional. You might become nostalgic. You might reminisce on times when they were younger and able to chase you around the house more. But the big difference that I'm trying to say is as we get further and further back to our lineage, we notice the more wrinkles. We notice time slowing down almost. And that all contributes to time of aging. Now, of course, aging can definitely be sped up by any environmental factors that I mentioned, such as war or any hard, strenuous job. Now, the one thing that I do want to mention from an example of my personal life is my father. My father is only in his 40s, but they say that his internal and body seem like he's in the 70s. And there's one external environmental factor. He saw war overseas and he was blown up 5 times. Now, most people his age that don't have that experience will definitely go ahead and, you know, be running around doing more hobbies. But my father is constantly in and out of surgeries. His knees are always cracking. He's constantly having multiple back surgeries. And they say that he has the body of a 70-year-old. My dad still has a lot of life in him, but I can see the way that he's aging in comparison to my mom that has not seen war. So aging is a very, very fun thing to think about. So let's go ahead and just go ahead and read some process. What is aging? Now, many people will think, in my words, I put at the top, aging would be the process of the body as time progresses. Now, the official description from Gilbert, we see that aging can be defined as time related deterioration of physiological functions necessary for survival and fertility. Now, here with aging, they don't say anything about skin, they don't say anything about wrinkles that everyone always worries about, but you can think about what are some physical traits we can see as we age. Now, this is why I did mention grandparents, because we do see that as we got older, a lot of their elasticity in their face, they begin to have more wrinkles, they can't stand up as well, they can't walk as far without assistance, and this is all due to aging, unless the environmental factors that could be different for everyone. Now, here's another thing that we think about when we think of aging: gray hair. Everyone gets scared about having gray hair, but I think it's a beautiful thing. It shows that you've lived your life to its fullest almost, and you have no care in the world. But let's go ahead and take a look at some other changes that we think of. More than the eye can see. Now, after we went ahead from some examples, did you notice there are different ways to age? Now, instead of just seeing skin, which is an organ, we do notice that there is a loss of elastic fibers and collagen, which is what would produce this different, thinner kind of skin type, and which is usually associated with other older people or sometimes people that have sun damage after being in the sun continuously without any protection. My mother-in-law is one of those people. Love her to death, but we always remind her to please take care of her skin because that is the biggest organ she could take care of for herself. She has control over. Now, there are other ways to age, as I mentioned, like cells. Cells are constantly being made, they die, and cells are what give us life. They are the fundamental blocks of our body, and that's what we learned in this class before this project. Those that discovered cells also discovered the fundamental building blocks of our body. So this is something that we do have to take care of. We have an internal part of our body that we have to take care of that can actually age. And we'll go ahead and see some examples, especially with some animals as well. But why are we talking about aging? Now, as we progress through the modules for this class, we notice that modern history has its parent. As in modern history from biology would always have its history. Now, from the research paper that we will be talking today based on the assignment, there was a scientist that I did read on, and I did go ahead and learn about, I believe from another history class that I took, but it would still count because the same theme of this class would be history and the conflict of its and of the history. So we have Leonard Hayflick, and he is one of the scientists that is paving the way for what I decided to talk about today, because aging is a very sensitive thing for me. I look at my mom and I remember her being the world's biggest superhero. But then I start to notice changes in her skin, changes in her energy level, and changes in her internal organs, which is what inspired me to talk about this today. So, who was Hayflick? Leonard Hayflick. Oh, yeah. He is a scientist, and at the time that we went ahead and got this paper from Watts back in 2011, he was still alive, but he wasn't able to be in the lab anymore due to his age. Again, remember I mentioned earlier, the body will tend to slow down, which is what causes a lot of older people to go into retirement, because their internal factors and external can't allow them to continue to work as if they were 20 years old. Now, Leonard always had a running joke that he was going to live for a very long time because his mother lived to over 100-year-old. So he said, it's in our genes. And that was said in that Watts paper here that would be cited. Now, he found the Hayflick limit. And what is that limit? The Hayflick limit is the number of times that normal human embryonic cells can divide before they succumb to basically death. Now, this will basically mean in simpler terms, the amount of times an embryo can divide before it dies. And here he also found this by seeing shortened telomeres as time progressed, as they aged. Remember that, as they aged. Now, Hayflick also helped us connect that aging is just not physical. It's not just about your skin, your gray hair. It's also internal. Now, let's get to the biggest chunk here. I will be spending a couple of minutes on this slide, but let's go ahead and get down to the whole basis of the paper. Here we have this wonderful fish here, beautiful fish, and we see that as humans age, we found that our skin changed, our hair color changes, and now cells die when they go within a cycle. Well, researchers, they've been researching, but they finally published this paper back in 26, which is this year, but in January, so a month ago. They found that a fish allowed scientists to see a faster pace of aging. That way they don't have to be waiting in that lab, just waiting for a fish to age like we do. But fish do tend to age a little bit faster. And this also gave humans an insight on how kidneys age as well. Now, kidneys, you gotta love them. We all have them. Usually when people do get older, they have to be careful with fatty liver, anything wrong with the kidneys, making sure your kidneys are healthy, making sure you're drinking enough water. That way you don't get any kidney stones. Now, they found that when they gave a fish part of an SGLT2 inhibitor, this allowed this fish to have a better kidney level and reduce any inflammation around the surrounding area. So it pretty much helped us see that it reduced the aging of that kidney's internal organ by 50% almost. Now, with the help of these scientists, we were able to go ahead and see how our bodies changed, and thank you to that fish. And what's next? So based on Leonard and the previous information we spoke about, we can find other organs and see how they aged, and even see how we can prevent our bodies from aging even faster. And here are my citations, and thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.